It's the Week 9 Waiver Wire Show here on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge. And this is a big one. We've got sort of the gem of the waiver wire, but then there are a lot of underrated players you guys got to be looking at out there on the waiver wire. Some injury away running backs, some players to stash for later. And we're adding in a new segment here where we're going to be talking about quarterbacks and defenses to stream here in Week 9. Dave Kluge, this is a big one. And we're going to kick this off with our number one player, Tyrone Tracy, who is available in 66% of fantasy leagues, which is
Not in my
utterly
league.
shocking. Yeah. Guys, please comment that down below. It helps the algorithm. Let us know he's not available in your league. But in the 66% that he is available in, what should fantasy managers be doing?
Dump everything you got. If you've got the number one waiver priority, if you've got $85 in fab remaining, I mean, this is like we saw last year in a very bad New York Giants offense. He was still giving us RB2 value on a consistent basis. Now we're looking at just an improved offense as a whole. Cam Scadaboo out of the picture. We know what it's going to be. Like we saw this exact backfield last year where Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary were competing for touches. Tyrone Tracy was getting 80% of the touches. He was getting all of the passing down work. We know the ceiling is so high here. I do my rest of season rankings, which I publish on Tuesday mornings. And I've got Tyrone Tracy as my RB19 rest of season. I mean, I'm looking at him at a middling RB2. This is a guy that if he is available on waivers, you can theoretically pick him up and put him in your lineup every week between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to not have him in your lineup every single week when we're seeing what Cam Scadaboo was doing. And obviously not the same players, but touchdown upside like that, receiving upside like that. Jackson Dart has the offense moving. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to have Tyrone Tracy in your starting lineup. The offensive line looks better too, man. Like Andrew Thomas is back.
Yep.
Like this whole offensive line looks good. The Giants offense is throwing to the running backs more. Like it was surprising to see how many of these targets Cam Scadaboo was getting on a weekly basis. And so now, we don't want to just say it's going to all transfer over to Tyrone Tracy because there's going to be some Devin Singletary, and that's more like a deeper league ad. Who we're not going to talk about him today, but that's another one. If Tracy's gone, a bunch of these other running backs we talk about are gone. Like Devin Singletary becomes a guy. But yeah, this is a priority pickup this week.
Eric Gray is inching towards a return too. They're saying he should be back in the next few weeks. I think Eric Gray, more likely than not, probably just takes over Devin Singletary's role. I mean, Tyrone Tracy, this is a guy we talked about a lot in the offseason. Like off the charts, size adjusted speed. He was a converted wide receiver, so we know he can catch passes. And this isn't just like a hope and a wish that we think might come to fruition. Like we just saw it last year. Like this guy was a plug and play RB2 over the second half of the season. And now the Giants offense as a whole is just better. It seems like every week when we do this waiver wire show, we're like, and we're going to talk about waivers and there's nobody. Thanks for sticking around. Like we finally have a guy here who I don't want to throw around the term league winner, but like it's not often that you can find a guy on the waiver wire that is just a plug and play option for the rest of the year.
Yeah, too late. You already said league winner. You did it. It's been recorded. It's in the transcript.
Crop it, share it, put socials, do what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm editing this video today, so you bet your bottom I will. I almost said a different word. All right, Dave, let's go down to the second tier here, where we've got two injury away running backs and two guys that I think it's different situations, but kind of similar here. Okay, so we've got Tank Bigsby and Ollie Gordon. Let's talk about Tank Bigsby first. He's available in 91% of leagues. Dave, he's your number 2 waiver wire pickup. For me, he's the number 3. This is a stash play, though, because the Eagles are going to be on bye. Saquon Barkley comes up with a groin injury. He says he could have returned to the game, but we know that players say a lot of things. So what's your take on this one? How are you approaching this waiver wire ad with Bigsby?
I mean, this is just an injury away stash, but I don't know if there's an injury away stash that has more upside than Tank Bigsby does right now. Like we've seen, this is a good Eagles offensive line. We've seen what guys can do even in spot starts here, and it's been very mercurial this year. Like it was Will Shipley to start the year, and then he cracked a rib in week 1, and then we saw AJ Dillon kind of coming in. AJ Dillon has now been a healthy scratch for back-to-back weeks. We saw Tank Bigsby get his first offensive touch 2 weeks ago, just an 11-yard carry. I don't understand what the Eagles did here. Like they traded multiple draft picks to just take Tank Bigsby and just turn him into a special teams player. But then we see last week, like he comes out, gets more opportunities. And I've always thought Tank Bigsby is a good running back. I don't really understand what happened, what transpired during his time in Jacksonville, but it clearly didn't work out there. But now we see, the speed, the elusiveness, the tackle breaking abilities. Those were all on display last week. This is purely a stash. Like I don't think there's going to be any sort of standalone flex appeal for Tank Bigsby. But if Saquon Barkley does have to miss any time, whether it be due to this groin injury or something else later in the year, Tank Bigsby would be a guy that you can look at as like a plug and play top 10, top 12 player.
I will say this for Tank Bigsby with his performance last week against the Giants. This is something that Tank Bigsby has always been good at and has always done since coming out of Auburn, which is try to bounce runs outside. And that was one of the things on his scouting report that's like he's going to get caught doing that in the NFL because he doesn't have the elite speed. But now when you're on an elite offense, and you've got space where you can do things like this, and reminder, this was without AJ Brown, then yeah, we're talking about a few more of these big plays. And this is also something that the Giants have struggled with all years, being able to set the edge, allowing big plays on the outside to running backs is something we talked about in like week 1 or week 2 with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, where he was going out and making big plays. So it's been something that, yes, the Giants defense has been better. I don't want to go like full unload the clip on a guy like
No.
Bigsby because of the like, but like I don't even want to go like double digits in my waiver wire fab here. This is more of like a if it happens, it happens. This is sort of a passive waiver wire bid if I'm making one.
Yeah, it's so hard to talk about like exactly how much you should spend on fab in different leagues because like I'm in a 10-team league with 5 bench spots in there. I'm probably putting like $2 or $3 on Tank Bigsby and hoping that I can
Right.
get him because like it's going to be a nonstop churn on the bench and there's always players that pop up on the waiver wire. But if I'm in a team where I'm starting 10 players on a weekly basis and I've got 10 bench spots, then I might be thinking about, like 25, $30 on Tank Bigsby. It all depends on how deep your league is. But in those deeper leagues, he was a guy who is available in a ton of leagues right now and is the RB2 on the Eagles. I think there's a lot of value there. I mean, like Will Shipley was a guy that I was drafting all offseason, and now I'm looking at Tank Bigsby in that role. Like that's a guy that I want on my team, even if it doesn't turn out to be anything between now and the end of the year.
The other guy in this tier is Ollie Gordon, the second, who backup running back for the Miami Dolphins, rookie. He's been one of these guys that we've been telling you to stash throughout the entire year. He was a good late round pickup. Hasn't always had something come to fruition here fantasy wise, but once again, just like a lot of these other running backs we're going to talk about, he is the injury away guy. I'm going to say this: he's my number 2 waiver wire stash this week, and it's because of the way that the Dolphins have sort of changed the way that their offense is working now. Dave, going back and looking at it here, I'll read this off to you. Throughout the season, they're at 40% run play percentage, which 39 technically. That would put them in the bottom 5 in the league. However, over the last 3 weeks, that percentage has gone up to 45%. And in this previous game, which different game script, going up against the Atlanta Falcons, where somehow they were winning, Miami Dolphins 57% rushing play percentage, which is totally different than what we have seen. But that's because the team has been changing week by week. We had Tyreek Hill get injured. We get Darren Waller get injured. Tua Tagovailoa throws 6 interceptions over the course of 2 weeks. Is a team that maybe they're having to evolve their offensive game plan a bit and try to control the clock a bit more, try to control the ball a little bit more and see what they can do with the ball in Devon Achane's hands and Ollie Gordon's hands. This was not something where he got late touches because they were winning in the game. He was used early and often. Actually, late in the game, Jaylen Wright came in and got like 10 touches when the game was totally out of reach because they wanted to keep Ollie Gordon healthy. So to me, that signals a guy who is not only a player with contingent upside, but a player who has standalone value right now going forward. Next few weeks, Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington. Then they have the bye, New Orleans, New York Jets. 5 very beatable run defenses there.
And to me, this seems like Mike McDaniel just going back to his roots. Like we saw during the early time of, when he was head coaching the Dolphins. Yeah, of course, there were the explosive plays with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and things like that. But it was all anchored around the run game where they had Rocky Mostert plunging in for 20 plus touchdowns and Devon Achane with these big plays. And that's where Mike McDaniel kind of got his start in the NFL. Like I remember when he was the run game coordinator for San Francisco and, he was doing these little tiny wrinkles, throwing the ball back to the running back instead of handing it off to try to like keep defenses on their toes. And, these really fun blocking schemes where they were getting running backs out wide where they could rip off these big chunk plays. Like that's where Mike McDaniel is at his best. So to see over the last 2 years, them kind of lean into this, like, hey, we're going to be this dinking dunk offense that just throws the ball nonstop. That doesn't really feel like who Mike McDaniel is. So I like to see them kind of getting back on track. Just they've got to decent offensive line. I mean, it's not great, but we see that when they do commit to the run, they can plow some lanes out there and make it easy for the running back. So I want to see them continue going this route. And I think that having a guy like Ollie Gordon, that early down guy who can run between the tackles, that just keeps Devon Achane a little bit fresher, where we can see him revert to some of that efficiency from 2 years ago that made us like him so much. So I think this is what the Dolphins should have been doing all along. And Ollie Gordon, I don't know if he's a guy that I'm like willing to put in my flex spot just yet, but
No.
definitely worth a stash. And if we see this go back to the offense that we saw 2 years ago, then all of a sudden Ollie Gordon is not only a guy with contingent upside, but a guy that also has some standalone value.
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to stash him, see how everything goes this week against Baltimore. Because
Yeah.
Thursday night football game, it's gonna be on prime time. Everyone go watch that, obviously. But Baltimore has been a defense that just hasn't quite made sense this year. Early in the season, they were terrible, and over the last few weeks, they've gotten a lot better. But this also has the chance to be a high scoring game. Dolphins, Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Tua, like it can blow up. So I'll be curious to see that one. Let's go down to tier number 3, where we've got a few more of these stash running backs and a wide receiver. So in this tier number 3, we've got Isaiah Davis, running back for the New York Jets, Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and Dylan Sampson, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Dave, we're sort of in lockstep, but like we're just off by a couple ranks here in these, so like nothing too big, I would say here. Let's start with Isaiah Davis, who is available in 68% of sleeper leagues. He is the backup running back for the New York Jets. Braylon Allen is out on IR. Lots of Breece Hall trade rumors. Let's just say this. We kind of know what the value is now with Isaiah Davis, who like quietly had a 100 plus scrimmage yard game. But if Breece Hall is traded, let's say Kansas City Chiefs, something like that, whatever, let's not go down that rabbit hole. If Breece Hall is traded, how do you value Isaiah Davis rest of the season?
Oh, he'd be like a back end RB2. I think there are some concerns about the Jets as a whole, but the volume would be there because they just don't have anybody else. And that's why I think Breece Hall probably doesn't get traded. I know there's some rumors swirling, but like they don't have any depth right now besides Breece Hall. And if they do trade him, they're probably going to the waiver wire and looking at a Gus Edwards or Jamal Williams or something like that. So I think they might stand pat, but either way, like we saw last week, season high in carries, targets, scrimmage yards. Like Isaiah Davis is starting to carve out a role for himself. And that was a very high scoring game. We're not going to see them hanging 39 points every single week, but Isaiah Davis has been steadily growing his role, just 3 years old. This guy's great size adjusted speed. We know he's got the pass catching chops as well. And that's why, early in the year, I was fading Isaiah Davis a little bit because I was like, he does all the things Breece Hall does. Breece Hall just does them better. And that's why I thought Braylon Allen made for like the better complementary back. But with him out of the picture now, they can just sit Breece Hall for entire drives and let Isaiah Davis go out there. And, he's not quite the same talent level as Breece Hall, but he can do a lot of the same things. So this is one where, it feels very similar to Ollie Gordon, where I don't know if there's any flex appeal yet. Like I'm not like hoping to get him in my week 9 lineups, but picking him up, waiting to see how this kind of plays out. Best case scenario is you get some standalone value. And then if that doesn't happen, if Breece Hall does get traded or injured or anything, then you're looking at an RB2 in spot starts.
I think this win may have killed. It's so weird because I'm trying to see both sides of it. I think the win may have killed any Breece Hall trade, but I also think that him having such a huge game increased his trade value. And if you're trying to be as objective as possible, you're saying, cool, we finally got a win against the Cincinnati Bengals, who have also been, pretty downtrodden as well, except for, the excitement from Joe Flacco. That defense hasn't been good. Man, I don't know. Objectively, if I'm the GM, I'm wanting to get some value for Breece Hall here. Like, I don't see the value of holding on to him and then watching him leave at the end of the season, especially if we are last in the league right now. Just go
Because
full
you
tank
are
on me.
a smart man, Alfredo, but
Don't lie to me.
I'd question if the Jets front office is a
Darren
smart
Moogie.
front office. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's
Outside
take a look at
noise.
the. Yeah. Oh gosh, Woody Johnson. It's my favorite owner in the NFL. He keeps the Jets bad. Let's go to the other two guys that are here. Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, available in 67% of leagues. And It's been a weird roller coaster where I think this is Troy Franklin's fifth time on the waiver wire show, if I'm being honest.
Hmm.
That's just who the Broncos are. It's you don't know who's going to be scoring. You don't know who's going to be getting the usage. Troy Franklin does appear to have taken that wide receiver 2 role in this offense. It's just a matter of what does that mean? Is it going to be a run-heavy game script? What kind of usage is Evan Ingram going to get? Is Cortland Sutton having the big game, or is he going to disappear for a little bit? And so I don't even know that I would look at Troy Franklin as a wide receiver 3 for fantasy. I'd look at him probably more as a wide receiver 4. And even then, I'm looking at a game that is going to be a little more matchup dependent, where the Broncos will have to pass the ball some more.
And even that, I've got him like just outside a wide receiver 4. He's my wide receiver 51 in rest of season rankings, where he's the wide receiver 38 in scoring because he scored 2 touchdowns last week. And like, if you look at it, he's the clear wide receiver 2. He's been top 2 in routes run every single game so far this year. It's either him or Cortland Sutton, but it just doesn't really matter that much. Like, they spread the ball around so much. There's so much pass volume going to the running backs here. Like you said, Evan Ingram, Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant is starting to break out now as well. Like, there's just only one ball, and there are so many mouths to feed in Denver that, yeah, I think like as we're getting in the heat of bye weeks and there's a lot of injuries right now, Troy Franklin makes for a guy that you can flex if you're desperate, but like you never really feel good about Troy Franklin. And, talking about him now on the waiver wire show, I get it because he had a big week, but it does feel like we're kind of chasing points here. And then you get confident enough to put Franklin in your lineup next week. And then he probably has one of his like 3 catches for 38-yard games. And you're just like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's what Troy Franklin does. So there is upside here and there is an opportunity here, but it's just really hard to rely on anybody in this Broncos offense.
Yeah, I mean, the usage is increasing, but still just a 77% route participation. Like, he's not quite a full-time player there. Like you mentioned, there are other guys that are coming up as well. It's also just been the touchdown variance, man. Like, he's just been catching touchdowns. He's been buoyed
Yep.
by that. And it feels a lot like, um, just because the years are getting mixed up, like second or third year Jameson Williams, where you're like, big game, big game, 4 catches, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, pick him up, start him next week. He's got the boom bust upside, but then it becomes more bust than not. And it's just I know that in the preseason we talk about that, of like draft these guys, because if they do boom throughout the season, they're great to have. The tough part is like now you have to be really studying the matchups and like, does this work for Troy Franklin? So have that in mind if you are going to be putting your waiver wire fab on him.
And I did
Um,
study the matchups last week, and Marvin Mims looked like a smash spot, a giant over under, a Cowboys team that's susceptible to big plays out of the
right.
slot. And Marvin Mims did nothing last week. So even when you are grinding matchups and trying to find every edge you possibly can, it still goes haywire every now and then.
Look at that. Nothing matters.
You
Stupid
you say
fantasy
nothing matters,
football.
but like I did in my article this morning, I do the rest of season rankings every Tuesday morning. I kind of talked last year about like what we saw through the first 8 weeks and then what we saw through the second 8 weeks. And like it does feel like at this point, I know a lot of people want to like just kind of kick it into cruise control and be like, all right, we know who the good teams are, we know who the good players are, but like the
But we
reality is
really
it
don't.
couldn't be further from the truth. Like through week 8 last year, it was Nico Collins and AJ Brown as the wide receiver 1 and 2. Like Jamar Chase was a bust through the first half of the season, and then we saw what happened over the second half. Last year through the first 8 weeks, it was Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon as the RB1 and RB2, both of who had very bad second halves of the season. So there's still a lot of football left. I know, like it might feel like that time where it's just like we know what's going on here. Let's just set our lineups. We know who the starters are, but there's still so much happening and so much changing on a weekly basis.
We see this all the time. Teams and players get hot as the season goes on, as the games
Mhm.
matter a bit more. That's what changes fantasy football. All those examples you just gave, perfect reasonings as to why to stay in it. Keep studying the
Let me
matchups. Keep looking at the waiver wire.
one more example. Johnny Smith last year through the first 8 weeks was
Yep.
the tight end 28. You know what he did over the second half of the season, Alfredo. He was the top scoring tight end. So like all of these guys that we're talking about, like, yeah, off the fantasy radar, that doesn't mean that like just because they're off the fantasy radar now, doesn't mean they can't be like top scoring in their position over the second half of the season. So still a lot of season left. I'll get off my soapbox and we can
Yeah, I
get
was about
back
to say,
to
no more
waiver wires.
soapboxing. No more soapboxing. Last guy in this tier, Dylan Sampson, running back for the Cleveland Browns. And like I mentioned, he's available in 89% of leagues. To me, this is very similar to Isaiah Davis, to Tank Bigsby, to Ollie Gordon. It really all depends what we see. So like, this is a guy in Dylan Sampson who he's kind of got a little bit of each of the players we were just talking about, where Jerome Ford has been a player that is talked about that may get traded, so that would open things up more. Quinshon Judkins is a player who currently has an injury to the AC joint in his shoulder, and then the Browns are on bye. Like, he just takes a little sprinkle of all the running backs we've talked about, and just it all becomes encompassed into one Dylan Sampson story here, because he was the guy who became the lead running back for the Browns when Quinshon Judkins left. We already know he's got the pass catching upside. Dylan Gabriel, not exactly a deep thrower here. So Dave, I don't think he's anything more than a stash.
Yeah.
But it's just like we said with other injuries, even though it's an AC joint sprain, running backs, they tend to use those shoulders quite a bit. So I'd be curious, even if he does come back, there is potentially he comes back for that game after the bye against Tennessee and potentially even leaves mid-game.
Yeah, a lot of times it does seem like with these AC joints for running backs, we'll see them playing that harness that just kind of like keeps their
Yep.
like range of motion a little bit. And I'd guess that with the bye, we'll probably see Judkins come back the week after, and that's why I'm not like, yeah, and I'm not crazy about Dylan Sampson. Just maybe anchoring myself to like my pre-draft analysis a little bit. I just don't think he's that good of a running back, and I think
He's
that
not,
I think we got
but he's a
blinded.
pass catcher.
Yeah, and even that, I think that we got blinded a little bit early because Joe Flacco is checking down so much to the running back. So like we see that 8-target game in week 1 and got really excited about that. I think if there was a missed game from Quinshon Judkins, we'd probably see a split between Ford and Sampson. So I get it, the opportunity could be here, but he's a guy that, like, when I'm making my waiver claims, he's going to be like 5th or 6th in my waiver claims list and like probably have $0 on him. And just like, if I end up with him, cool, but like not a guy that I'm aggressively going out for this week.
All right, let's go to the next tier here where we've got two wide receivers that are essentially carbon copies of each other.
Seriously, yeah.
I've heard the name pronounced both ways. I've heard Chimere and I've heard Chimere. So Dike, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, available in 81% of leagues. Dave, the other guy, Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, available in 85% of leagues. So both of these guys, very similar. I would say that I prefer the offense and situation of the Green Bay Packers to that of the Tennessee Titans. I prefer the track record of Christian Watson to that of Chimere Dike, but I think there's also some excitement about a rookie who has not seen health or injury issues like Christian Watson has, and a team in the Tennessee Titans that will have to throw no matter what because they are always going to be behind. So if you're looking at either of these players, let's say you can make one bid, a couple bucks here in your waiver wire, and it's one of these players. Who do you prefer?
When I did this yesterday, I said I preferred DK over Watson, but then actually, like, by the time I finalized my rest of season rankings, I actually do prefer Christian Watson once I went back and kind of, watched what both of them are doing. And DK has been pretty good over the last few weeks. Like, we saw him really show that speed on that big touchdown catch 2 weeks ago. We're seeing the opportunity grow for him. But at the end of the day, Christian Watson, we're looking at a 2nd-round pick here on a much better offense and a team that's desperate for a vertical threat. So I have Watson ahead of DK. Dude, Watson was a huge whiff on me. I don't think I drafted him like in the hundreds of best ball rosters I drafted this offseason.
I don't think that we even knew that he would be available for this season. I think most people expect him to be out for the whole season.
And I heard some of those reports in the preseason, and I was just like, nah, like that's not going to happen. And at the time, also when you're looking at projections, Romeo Doubs is there, Jayden Reed is there, Tucker Kraft is there, Matthew Golden is there. Well, now Jayden Reed is hurt. Matthew Golden isn't really taking that step forward. So now the opportunity is there for the taking for Christian Watson.
Yep.
And he looked great. Like, he looked really, really good in this first game back, played over 50% of the snaps. I think his role is only going to grow here. So, I prefer Christian Watson ahead of Chimere Dike. And even, earlier when we were talking about Dylan Sampson, like I think I'd go Christian Watson over Dylan Sampson right now too.
Yeah, I think as we're talking about this, I know what the graphic's going to say, and I know the order we did this in, but that's why I love these shows. Is like, we're not sticking to whatever it was pre-show. We can actually talk these things out. I think with the potential of the Green Bay Packers offense and with Christian Watson, the story, like, these are the boom bust games. I see Christian Watson the same as I would Troy Franklin, and that's a better offense. So, like, why would I not want to have Christian Watson, who is available in 85% of leagues, like I mentioned, in that tier 3? right? As like the number 4 waiver wire pickup for us this week.
I
It,
mean,
it might,
I know we have to send our like stuff off to the graphic designers so we can get the show
yeah, like
ready,
it's
but
already there. It's
I
already
know,
there. Like
like,
we're cooked for this episode. That's fine.
but again, like I did when I finished my rest of season rankings, which I do after Monday night, I have Christian Watson one spot ahead of Troy Franklin because I see him as very similar players, and I just have a little bit more faith in them consolidating the targets in Green Bay than I do in Denver. But even that, like very similar offenses where there are a lot of mouths to feed. We know there's going to be explosive plays here. And, I just Christian Watson is a better player. We've seen sustained success and production from him throughout his NFL career. That's not something we've seen from Troy Franklin. So yeah, Watson's one of those guys that like a huge mover of everybody that moved up and down in my rankings from last week. Nobody moved up more than Christian Watson. I've got him inside my top 50 rest of season.
And Watson's going to be one of those guys that's going to be readily available. There has been zero hype about him throughout the season. Even when he was coming back, everyone's like, oh, Christian Watson's coming back. I'm sure he'll get 10% of the snaps and nothing of any significance. And there we go. I will say there'll probably be some more competitive bids because this was a primetime game and
Right.
everyone in your league saw it and it's a familiar name. So if you want him, be prepared. You might have to bid a little higher than you expect. Dave, let's go down to the, you know what? Yeah, let's go down to the next tier here where we've got, this is the last tier, and this is where we've got Jayden Higgins, Jaylen Noel, and Colston Loveland. All rookies, rookie pass catchers. Dave, the Texans wide receivers. I'm interested in this. I have Jaylen Noel ranked ahead of Higgins. You have Higgins ranked ahead of Noel. I think that both of these guys are in similar scenarios where when the veteran comes back, they could get relegated. But I also think that with the way this Texans offense was able to play last week, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. I think there's more role available for Jaylen Noel than there is Jayden Higgins at this point, but you can keep playing devil's advocate. Jayden Higgins, higher draft capital, guy they invested in, could play well and complement Nico Collins nicely. So who do you prefer in this situation?
I prefer like pure talent and like pre-draft evaluation. I prefer Jaylen Noel to Jayden Higgins, but what we saw 2 weeks ago when Nico Collins left in the middle of the game, Noel stepped up as the wide receiver one. But we see this often that like mid-game injuries kind of put teams into like scrambling mode where they're just like doing whatever they can to keep their head above water. And I think that's where Jaylen Noel stepped up with a week to game plan. They did kind of build around Jayden Higgins to be the wide receiver one in this offense.
Right.
He had 8 targets. He ran the most routes. And I think when you look at what Nico Collins can do, Jayden Higgins is such a similar player that you can just drop Jayden Higgins right into that X role. So this is tough for me. I mean, like technically I put Jayden Higgins ahead of Jaylen Noel, but I think that once Nico Collins is back into the discussion, then I could see Jaylen Noel being more of the complementary guy to Nico Collins. He can be that Tank Dell type of player that can get deep downfield, play out of the slot, make the big plays, make plays after the catch. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. I like both of these receivers. I'll give the very slight edge to Jayden Higgins, especially if Nico Collins has to miss any more time. But I think like if we're looking through the fantasy playoffs in this imaginative scenario where Nico Collins is healthy, I think Jaylen Noel is actually the guy I would prefer late in the year.
Yes, Jaylen Noel's the guy that I like a little bit more because there's, and this is very narrativey, because of the similarities to Tank Dell, a guy who can play out of the slot, very explosive playmaker, good route runner, can do a lot of the same things that Tank Dell did, maybe not at the exact same level, but can do a lot of the same things and create explosive plays even when he needs to downfield, because we saw that this past week. Actually, low-key kind of Christian Kirk might actually end up being a trade candidate. Because of what we've seen with this wide receiver room and guys
Right.
being able to step up. There may be teams out there that are looking for a veteran receiver, and it's easy to just be like, yeah, we'll take Christian Kirk, throw him in the slot, put him in the Z, whatever we need. Where Texans, I'm just going to say it again. Once you find success doing that one thing, you sort of keep doing that one thing because you need to get some wins. That's what we just talked about, Dave. It's like the first 8 weeks is not the final 8 weeks, and this could be a very different Texans team going forward. I think both these receivers have earned more snaps regardless of when Christian Kirk comes back. Nico Collins obviously is going to be doing his thing, right? Like none of that is changing. But yeah, I think I'm with you. You said you prefer Jaylen Noel later in the season, correct?
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for like immediate production, if Nico Collins has to miss another game, I think Jayden Higgins would be the guy. But I
I
think that
think for
when you
Higgins,
look
you're
at
hoping for touchdown upside, right?
right, and I do think like if we saw it, 8 targets last week. Like, if Nico Collins isn't there, he's going to play the X role, and he's going to get a lot of targets. But I think that when Nico Collins is there, then he kind of becomes this rotational guy where Jaylen Noel can
Yeah.
be on the field for, like, the majority of snaps alongside Nico Collins. You talk about the Tank Dell comp, I think that's kind of a good one, but I loved, like, of all of the comps that we do throughout the spring, I came up with a Golden Tate comp for Jaylen Noel, and I just love
Mhm.
that one. Like, just a small guy that somehow still comes down with these, like, absurd acrobatic contested catches downfield. He is just so tenacious after the catch. Big fan of Jaylen Nolan. Would love to see what he can do with an expanded role.
Yeah, him with, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. He hasn't had the best route participation,
Right.
Dave, but I mean, 9 receptions, 140 yards on 13 targets. It's been fantastic. He's efficient. When he's out there on the field, they are using him. They are very intentional with it. It's not one of these things, well, let's just fit you into whatever role we have. The Texans have been more intentional with it. Last guy on this list, Colston Loveland. And I'm going to defer to you on this one a bit more because we've got the Cole Kmet injury. The Bears passing offense has been a little wonky lately, and it's hard to know what to expect going forward. But Colston Loveland, his role is growing. He's available in 75% of leagues here. He is the last player on our waiver wire list that we are interested in, but tight end is ugly. There could be some breakout potential here, Dave. Where do you stand with Colston Loveland?
I mean, he's worth a pickup, right? We see the role growing, and that's what we want to see. 81% of the snaps last week was the best he's seen so far in his young career. 5 targets, 38 yards. Nothing to write home about, but both best of his career so far. And more than anything, I think he just passes the eye test. Like, this is such
Yep.
a fluid athlete. He is a big-bodied guy who just like effortlessly can catch balls. And we when he was drafted coming off of a shoulder injury that he was still recovering from, and clearly had lost some mass. Didn't look like the player he was in college. Missed all of OTAs, missed the beginning of training camp. So it was kind of a slow acclimation, like getting him up to speed, but was making a ton of eye popping plays throughout training camp. And then he picks up another injury in season and misses some time. Comes back from the bye, still limited there. So it's been frustrating so far as the injuries are just kind of piling up. But healthy now. He's been practicing in full last week, had his career best game last week as well. So this is one where, like, not putting him anywhere near my starting lineups now, but some
Um,
actionable. Yeah.
this week I might be though, going up against Cincy, who has been just abominable against the tight end.
Yeah. And,
If
and a lot of that Steelers game where they just got eaten alive by like 13 personnel that entire game. But yeah,
Mason
I
Taylor
get it.
caught himself a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just, just
Here's some players that I would drop for Colson Loveland. Like, looking at my rest of season rankings, this might sound crazy, but like, I dropped TJ Hawkinson to pick up Colson Loveland. I dropped
sure.
Taysom Hill, who, I was probably a little bit higher on him than most, but Juwan Johnson, Dalton Schultz, Jonnu Smith. Like, I'd prefer Colson Loveland ahead of all those guys at this point.
Well, and Luther Burden's dealing with a concussion as well. It's like
Yeah.
that's another, how many players need to be out until we start saying, okay, yeah, Loveland's a streamable tight end. I think that's why I wanted to have him on the list. You have the
Can we
matchup,
just
you've got the injuries.
Yeah, can we just talk about like how awesome this rookie class has been for tight ends too? Like, Arondé Gadsden out here has just been absolutely on fire over the last 3 weeks, averaging over 100 yards per game. We got Tyler Warren has just been like a set and forget tight end one all year.
Yep.
Mason Taylor is emerging.
You
We've
call
seen
him Mason
flashes from
Turtler?
almost. We've seen some flashes from Elijah Arroyo as well. Colson Loveland starting to put it together. Like, this is a fun rookie tight end class. I'm
Yep.
excited.
Well, there you have it. We went through our top waiver wire pickups at the running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. Let's take a look at some quarterbacks to stream, some defenses to stream. Dave, let's start with the quarterbacks. 3 guys I'm going to list here with the availability and their opponent. Sam Darnold going up against the Washington Commanders. Trevor Lawrence against the Las Vegas Raiders. Tua Tagovailoa versus the Baltimore Ravens. Darnold's available in 58% of leagues. Lawrence 68, Tua 78%. So we got them there in order. Is there a guy here that you prefer the most out of the 3 that you feel like you can trust if you are in a bind this week at quarterback?
Sam Darnold for sure. This is a game where we're expecting Jayden Daniels to be back. So with Jayden Daniels back, that's going to force the, I don't want to say force, but we imagine that the Commanders are probably going to put up some points in this game, which will mean that they won't be able to lean on the run like they have in weeks past. And the couple of times that we've seen Seattle have to kind of open up the playbook and let Sam Darnold throw the ball, he is smashed. And this seems like it could be one of those game scripts here. So I'm going with Sam Darnold over those guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the same, and I think that's the order I would have them into is Darnold, Lawrence, Tua. I think there's probably maybe the highest upside with Tua going up against Baltimore and what could be a shootout, but the Baltimore Ravens defense has been much better over the last 3 weeks. They're 5th against fantasy quarterbacks in points allowed, whereas going up against Washington, they've just been kind of a good fantasy point funnel throughout the year. Sam Darnold has looked great, especially coming off a bye. Let's go. Like that's what I want to see for Seahawks here. DST, defense, special teams to stream. Dave, 3 teams here. Rams going up against New Orleans Saints, Chargers against Tennessee Titans, and Jaguars going up against the Raiders. Rams are I want to say they're the most interesting to me because I think they're the best defense on this list, and they're going up against what's likely to be Tyler Shuck's first NFL start.
Mm-hmm.
Saints have already been allowing the most fantasy points to opposing fantasy defenses. So that one, I think that would be my preference. I know it's your preference, but what order would you put these 3 in? Rams, Chargers, Jaguars as streamable defenses?
Yeah, I mean, these are all great matchups, and I'll probably be putting bids on all of these if they're available. But the Jaguars have just been a turnover machine this year, and they got dropped last week because they were on bye in a ton of leagues. So I think that makes them readily available.
91% of leagues. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they're just like averaging over a turnover per game. And you look at them going up against Geno Smith, who has been a turnover machine as well.
Yep.
Like this could just be one of those huge blow up spots for a defense and special teams here. But yeah, the Rams, like they are just a good defense. Getting to go up against a guy getting his first NFL start, as you said, like that's a really juicy matchup as well. So I'd go Rams, Jaguars, Chargers, but I mean, just flip flopping the Chargers and the Jaguars from the order that you have them. But I think the Rams are definitely the one that you're trying to get here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick with the Rams and the Chargers. Tennessee is still just a sack machine for defenses, right? Like Cam Ward's just been sitting there letting the pressure get to him. Jaguars, though, I think is a really fun defensive stream because I think in a lot of leagues, people looking for defenses, these top 2 won't be available. Jaguars,
Right.
I think, become a very interesting one going up against the Raiders this week.
Yeah.
Well, Dave,
This is a good week. This is a good week
yeah.
for waivers. I know they're like, there have been a few weeks where like I sit down on Tuesday night and I start perusing the waiver wire and I'm like, all right, we're running it back next week with the same team. This is a week where like I am going to have to sit down for a couple of hours tonight and like go through all the waivers in all my leagues because there are a lot of good players worth picking up. So I know last week we kind of jokingly at the end of the show, we said, hey, if you made it this far, tell us how bad the show sucks. And a lot of people took that literally and told us that they show.
By the way, not the show, the waiver ads, man.
The waiver episode, yeah.
Yeesh.
But what we got was just a lot of like, wow, this show sucks. So, hey, do us a favor if you made it this far. If you're at the 40-minute mark of this show, tell us how awesome this show is. Yeah, we love to hear it.
This show is great. This show is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, those YouTube comments. I kind of forgot that I did that like tongue-in-cheek call to action at the end of the show, and you and I like later that afternoon were like, what did we do wrong?
I saw the first comment. I saw the first comment, and someone was like, "This show sucks," and I was just like, "You mean the waivers, right?"
Yeah.
Right.
I kind of forgot about that. So yeah, we could after beating us down last week, you guys could build us up a little bit and tell us how much you like the show. We can use it. We are very fragile.
I mean, we gave you guys 11 waiver ads here, 6 streamers. I think we went pretty good. We went in here for week 9. And Dave, you and I will be back again tomorrow with the trade episode. And then on Thursday, we'll be going through our rankings, give you all of our top running backs and wide receivers that you guys should be looking at to start and pay attention to those matchups. Because fantasy playoffs are getting closer, man. Closer and closer and closer. For most people, it's going to be week 15 is where those fantasy playoffs are. So we're almost there, man. We're getting there. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.